Hello, everybody. How you doing? Today we're going to be going over the November, I believe, Datamines here. Just getting through them done. We're going over the spotlights, and then we're also going over the new cards. So that should be a lot of fun. And let's begin. And we are continuing once again with the November cards. So this one is a little bit smaller. There's only 4 cards instead of 5 for October, but they're no less powerful. So let's get into it. First one, we have the season pass card, which is Mrs. Marvel. We've actually talked about Miss Marvel before in one of the previous data mines, and lo and behold, it had a different ability. Now it has changed. Now it's an ongoing adjacent locations where your cards have unique costs, have +5 power. So what that is, assuming total of 4/5. It used to be a 3/5, now it's a 4/5. What I'm assuming that means is that, let's say you have a 1 and a 2 on your left lane, right? And you play Miss Marvel in your middle, which most people are going to play Miss Marvel in the middle. It should work perfectly. Your 1 and your 2 have unique costs. Miss Marvel, three costs. It's in the middle lane anyway. It doesn't matter. So you get that, and then on the right side, perfectly fine as well. You have nothing there. It doesn't matter. So that perfectly works well. Where it will stop working is, let's say you play another 1 cost or another 2 cost in that left lane. Then okay, you have 2 of the same cost in that lane. Now it turns off in that location specifically, but still your right lane is perfectly fine. You have nothing in there, works perfectly well. And then let's say you play a 5 and a 6 on your right lane, that will still activate because you have 2 1 drops or 2 drops, whatever I said. In that left lane it won't work, but your right lane is perfectly fine, so you can still get a 410 worth of stats, right? If everything works perfectly, you have all unique cards, it's a 415. If not, it's a 410. Very, very, very powerful, and I think much easier to activate than what it was before. Beforehand, it had to be the only card in the middle location, essentially, is where you were going to play it, and then it would work. Now, all you have to do is make sure you're not playing 2 of the same cost in the same lane, which is not that hard to do, in my opinion. So this is a very much more reliable 415, which is crazy stats. Because as well as, now keep in mind, I would like some clarification in this just to know if it does work how I am suggesting, right? Because that is very free. That's a lot of freedom in how you play your cards out with something like this. But if that does work in that way, this seems like a very, very powerful card to have in your collection. Should work super well. It should work with Onslaught, and it should work with so many other good synergies. You can go Miss Marvel, Iron Man, Onslaught. Like, that's so much tempo. Like, that's so crazy good. Like, I'm just saying, like, this card seems very strong. Very strong. If it stays in this if it's the same ability, I assume we're gonna play with it, and then we're going to nerf it as a community because it's gonna be too high presence. But yeah, it seems really strong currently, but it's still so far away that it could be changed. They could do more play tests, and then they could adjust it, right? But currently, that's what we have in the data mines. That's what we're going to talk about. Seems really powerful. Next up, we have Gladiator. So Gladiator, on reveal, add a card from your opponent's deck to their side of this location. So you give them a card. Bam! If it has less power, destroy it. So if it has less power, it kills it. Now, nice thing with Gladiator is so many cards die. Like 90% of the cards in the game die to Gladiator. Like it's the 80 to 90%. So many cards you're just killing off for free. Now the downside, which I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about, but I assume people are going to talk about as they go, is that on reveal still proc, right? On reveal. Now that could be a bad thing, to be fair, but on reveal still proc, right? So let's say Loki, right? Loki's very popular right now. Bam, you get a free Loki. Yeah, your Loki dies, but you get the proc ahead of time. You know, you get a free. What's a good snow guard? I guess would be decent. Like you want stuff that on reveals that proc super decently. Like obviously, if they get your Silver Surfer, like yeah, you lose. You know, but there are some downsides for having it come to their side of the field, even if it gets destroyed. So definitely, Gladiator seems pretty good. It's a 3/8. It's a It's a Silver Surfer target. It's a Werewolf buff activator. It just seems like a very playable card. You don't have to play it. You don't have to activate it, right? You can always do it with Cosmo if you want. You could do it with Zero if you want. So it doesn't have to always trigger, but just seems like a pretty powerful card with not the craziest downside. Like the downside isn't that bad for you. And you could play this in destroy, theoretically, right? This could be a destroy target where it activates your death, it activates your null, right? So this just seems like a card that's going to see play. Seems very powerful. Seems flexible. Seems viable in my opinion. Now, do I know the perfect deck this is going to be in? No, I don't know. It's too far to tell. But it does seem like it has the potential to be a card that sees good play. So good for Gladiator. Next up, we have Annihilus. This is a card we've also reviewed, but got completely changed. It is nothing like its old ability. Its old ability was a move ability where it moved every card in your board. Now it doesn't do that. Well, I mean, in a sense, it does do that, but not in the same move way. So now it's a 5/8 with the on reveal. Your cards with 0 or less power switch sides, and you destroy those that can't. Now, the initial clarification is: are you destroying every card on your field that doesn't switch sides, or are you only destroying the cards with 0 or less power? I'm assuming it's only destroying the cards with 0 or less power, because if it's not, damn, that's so much harder to play. With this means that you have a perfect junk finisher card where, let's say you're playing Debris, you're playing Viper, you're playing Hood, right? And you're tired of them being on your board. You're playing Sentry, right? That's a perfect one. And bam, you hit this Annihilus on 5. That Sentry -10s go into the opponent's side. That all your debris, all your trash is going to your opponent's side, and then even if it doesn't, even if they have a full board state, bam, you destroy them. So you don't have any drawbacks really. Very, very powerful ability for junk decks, and junk decks need some love because no one's playing junk decks really. Some people are, but no one's really playing junk decks right now. So seems like a really cool ability. Seems really fun. Seems really frustrating. I will say, two Annihilus players, like they don't have any ability, right? They don't do anything, right? Because you do it, and then you move over, and then you just play it back, and then then you just move it back or get destroyed, right? So, like, when it comes out, it might not feel like super crazy if everyone's playing it, but the people that are not playing it right, they might feel the sting of the Annihilus junk meta. So a cool card, potentially problematic. However, I mean, it's problematic, right? Because the way to deal with this is to fill your locations, which is problematic in itself. So generally seems like a frustrating card in gameplay to deal with. So I do wonder if it's gonna cause complaints in the game, but it seems fun if you're doing it and you're not getting hit by it. So I do wonder how it's gonna end up being in reality when it comes out. But yeah, seems cool. And then the last one we have for November is Martyr. At the end of the game, you move to a location that loses you the game if possible. So why would you play this? This card is actively killing you. It's stabbing you in the back with its sword. Why would you play this? Well, it's a 2/6, and most of the time you're going to fill your locations on the final turn, right? You're going to not be this card will not be able to move. So with that in mind, you're just playing a 2/6. And most 2 drops are 2/5s, or they're 2/5s conditionally. Like they're better than a 2/5, but they have a conditional effect. They're not like, hey, I just played a 2/6. Like, here you go, it's a 2/6. So same thing here. It's just a 2/6, very, very decent, and can't see play, still works. Same thing with Gladiator. You can zero it out. You can't really I guess you could play with Sauron, but I mean, why would you really? But you can just play it in those type of deck lists as well. But generally, it's just going to be a 2/6 with a easy to do drawback that you can easily mitigate, which is just a good card. So still think that's very viable to see play. It's a card that can work super well if you discount by 1. So things like Sarah, if Sarah's still alive after the Mobius runs through her. So, but yeah, definitely in those scenarios, this could be a very, very nice finisher. 2/6 is pretty good to play, and the downside isn't that reliable, right? Most likely, you're not going to be put in a situation where Martyr actually moves and then you lose because of it. Like that's, I mean, it could happen for sure. We're gonna see those games for sure, but if you're building a deck with this in mind, you shouldn't have that situation. So seems playable. So those are the 4 cards, and then of course we do have the locations, which I don't really. What's a genie? What's a djinn? I mean, what's a djinn? What is a djinn? I have no idea. Wonder what that's gonna be, but we'll talk about it when it gets closer. Then we have the season pass variants, which some people like. But main thing is the spotlights. What do we have for the spotlights? Eliath, sorry, is already being in the spotlights for November with Null and Negasonic. Negasonic, here's my guess, is gonna get a buff before this comes out. That's my guess here. So it's hard to like. With that in mind, it's hard to talk about these, right? Because like just like the Snow Guard, right? If Negasonic gets a playable buff and now it's in the meta, well then my evaluation of this is going to be very different. But right now, right, the people that want to play with Null have Null for sure, and then Negasonic's not very good, and then Eliath is the spotlight you're looking for this month. So a lot of people that want to play with Eliath are going to have it. So like this doesn't seem very appealing. But obviously things can change if Negasonic gets a buff, and that's my guess that they're gonna see what happened with Snowguard. Everyone's going for Snowguard now, and bam, Eliath. Same thing. Same like Eliath's getting the cards with the buff, right? Same thing here, where you grab it and it feels good. So definitely something to be aware of here. But my current thoughts with its current power level of Negasonic, and have everyone who wants Null having Null, not a good spotlight to go for. This is a cool variant though. I mean, whatever. Next up we have Gladiator. So Gladiator is getting mixed up with Loki, and Mirage, which also works with Loki. So if you decide to skip the season pass, here's your chance to get it. So I think that's super fair. Like Loki's probably still going to be very playable. So seems like a pretty good spotlight to get, right? If you miss Loki, yeah, you can get it here. So seems reasonable. If you do have Loki, obviously that's going to make this feel a little bit worse. I do think Gladiator is playable, so not a bad one to get. And then Mirage is also pretty good in Loki, so I guess the synergy is there, so you could definitely do that. So it seems decent. Seems like a decent spotlight. But I haven't looked at all of them yet, so I'm actually looking at them for the first time. So We'll see. And then here we have Annihilus, Dakin, and X23. Not bad. X23 was already in the spotlight as well for October. It's actually interesting, right? Where I want to talk about series drops and the lack of them, but you can see they're having lots of repeats already. And does that build the question, is there not enough new cards to put in their spotlights? Is there not enough still? Like, they haven't dropped for like 4 months and they're still having like multiple repeats. You could argue like, where's Howard the Duck, right? But I assume like Howard the Duck is getting some treatment, right? Because right now it's left in the ditch. But yeah, for now, pretty interesting. I assume X23 is a card you'd pick up before you get to this, but if not, this is a perfectly good time to get X23. And then you have Dakin and Annihilus, which also seem pretty decent. Dakin being the season pass card means a lot of people are going to have it, but X23 is a card that people might not have. So it's so far in the future, it's hard to evaluate, honestly, especially considering that X23 is in a previous spotlight. This might just lose a lot of value because a lot of people will have gotten X23 already. And then Dakin is season series pass card people already have. And then you just have 2 cards that people already have. And then you have the Nihilist, right? So kind of hard to evaluate, but looks okay, especially if you don't have X23. And then we have Martyr with some bad cards, I'm honestly gonna say. Spider-Man 2099 needs some type of buff, I would say. And then Jean Grey, same thing, also needs some type of buff. So these are this is Martyr with 2 cards that I would say are in need of a buff. So really not the most enticing spotlight. As well as Martyr itself might be playable, but not interesting, right? Not a card you're like, wow, I'm really happy I spent my spotlights on a 2/6. Like, that does nothing. That actively kills me. Actively wants me to lose. I'm so happy that I spent my resources on that. So I don't really think that's something people are going to be really gunning for, spending spotlights super hard for. So looking at them in full, the ones that jump out to me, I guess, would be the Gladiator one if you're missing Loki, and Alioth one if Negasonic gets buffed. And then if none of that happens, then Annihilus, just because I think maybe the most interesting card of the set. So definitely some thoughts here. I'm so ready for things to be completely different in 2 months when I actually go through it in that context, in the context of the season happening, right? But 2 months, maybe I'll be close to the truth. But yeah, those are pretty cool. And then we don't have really much information for December, but we do have a lot of information. I'm really happy that Second Dinner decided to give us all of this in the Datamines, because we saw in the month before we were missing a lot of information, but now we have a lot more. We can really plan, we can really prepare. So that's usually good. So overall, what are your thoughts? Do you guys like these cards? Do you guys think they're too strong, too weak? They're not too weak, guys. But what are your thoughts on these cards? They seem interesting as well, and the ones for October as well. So definitely some thoughts. Hope you guys that wanted this appreciate it. But other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated Colin Snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be